8 people were injured after a man used a flamethrower against a group of people marching at an event calling for the release of Israeli hostages. 4 victims were male and the other 4 were female, according to authorities. Their ages ranged from 52 to 88, and their injuries ranged in severity. 2 were airlifted to a burn unit at a hospital in the Denver area. So here's this from the New York Times. The group, a familiar one in Boulder, has walked through downtown regularly since late 2023 to remind the community of the hostages taken by Hamas in the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel. They often wear red, speak the names of the hostages, and sometimes sing. A man later identified as Mohamed Sabry Soliman, 45, yelled "Free Palestine" and threw an incendiary device into the crowd, according to Mark Mikulek, the FBI special agent in charge. Within moments, smoke and screams filled the air. Victims fell to the ground. Others tried to put out flames with discarded clothes. Soliman was taken into custody after witnesses pointed him out, the chief said, but was later booked on multiple charges in the Boulder County Jail. Rachel Amaru, a leader of the group, said this in regards to the attack. Our walk has been nothing ever but peaceful, and this was a blatant act of anti-Semitism in the streets of Boulder. And Stephen Miller, he also had something to say. This is him. A terror attack was committed in Boulder, Colorado by an illegal alien. He was granted a tourist visa by the Biden administration, and then he illegally overstayed that visa. In response, the Biden administration gave him a work permit. The suspect is an Egyptian citizen. He arrived in the United States in August 2022 as a non-immigrant visitor, according to multiple law enforcement officials. He filed a claim a month later in September and was granted a work authorization in March 2023. The authorization expired at the end of March of this year, at which point it appears he remained here illegally, the officials added. So just like the killings of the 2 Israeli embassy staffers, this really does nothing but hurt the Free Palestine cause. And the timing really couldn't be worse, as immigrants, whether they're here legally or not, are already being harassed by ICE and MAGA, and we have another story about that later on in the show. This guy's immigration status isn't, to me, the most important thing here. He committed a horrible crime, so he deserves to be punished for what he did. If he's not supposed to be here, then part of his punishment will likely and probably should be deportation. No one's gonna argue with that arrest and deportation. But Jayar, anytime there's an incident like this one, there's often discussion surrounding whether this was an isolated incident or maybe if it speaks to a greater trend that can be extrapolated to all people who look or sound like the perpetrator. So there's that, but then another aspect to consider is whether we've created an environment here in this country where crimes and violence like this can and will occur. So in this case, according to the right, as we're already seeing from them, that environment would be one where we are too welcoming to foreigners. And for people on the left, it could potentially be the United States' unquestioning support of Israel and the continued funding of war crimes in Palestine, something that could understandably make people feel a little bit frustrated, and frustrated people do act out. I'm not supporting the behavior, I'm just saying that's probably where it's coming from. So what do you expect to see or hear regarding this story and the way it's reported on in the coming days?
Yeah, it's the continued destruction of our society and the way that we see each other and the way that we respond to violence. Violence has been committed, terror attacks have been committed, homegrown terror attacks have been committed, way more than foreign nationals that may come, or even foreign-born folks who may happen to be visiting, any of that type of stuff. We've seen this for decades. And honestly, in Donald Trump's first term, there was a downgrade and an omission and a disregard for homegrown terrorists. So when you have people like Steve Miller talking about, this is a terror attack, I mean, sure, it absolutely was. Innocent people that were honestly practicing their right for free speech, for what they want to believe in and what they want to preach and talk about and spread the word on, they were attacked for doing just that. And it's not the first time. The problem with people like Stephen Miller and Donald Trump and the rest of the folks who are gonna talk about this is the Free Palestine movement that's doing this, is that they didn't care about anyone's lives before that. So it has this intersection of people who are saying, look, this is anti-Semitism. And then there's people who are gonna push back on that because it's what is behind all of the attacks. We've seen in Palestine, this whole idea from the president of the United States who says he wants to finish the job, not just this one, but the previous one as well. This is not a Democratic versus a Republican thing. This is an American stance that's supporting this consistent genocide of folks in the Middle East and Gaza, right? And as this continues to go on, there's shifting narratives about who's the biggest one to blame for it, which makes it continue, which makes it grow, which makes it go to someone else being frustrated and saying, well, the only way that we're gonna have any kind of person get any kind of response to this is for retribution or revenge. And when revenge happens, it's committed against innocent people. So it's a really good reason to not continue to support revenge against innocent people in earlier stages before that, in earlier stages before that. So there's never a cut and dry end all be all. This was the one guy problem in this situation when people are killed, innocent people are killed like this or injured, I'm sorry, in this particular situation like this. When we've seen tens of thousands of innocent people murdered straight in our faces. We're watching it every day. And if there's some people who don't care about that, they've openly said they don't care about that. They've openly said, well, until they free those hostages, we're gonna continue to kill innocent people. You're the same type of person that may say, I don't care about these innocent people who are walking in the streets of Boulder, Colorado, who were attacked by someone who, it was a terrorist and injured and potentially killed some people. You're the same type of person. So we can't have this whole thing where Stephen Miller comes out and says, well, look at this. This is terrorism. Look, because he overstayed his visa. And of course, he brought up Joe Biden and saying how he let all these illegals in. There was illegal folks that were let in when Donald Trump was in office. There were folks that were let in, undocumented immigrants, when Barack Obama was in office. There's always have been undocumented folks coming into the country. The difference now is they want to weaponize it for our society to be upset at each other. And these kinds of homegrown terror attacks, because it's built from the way our society talks about each other and likes to compartmentalize these things as if they're not connected. It's never gonna stop until we figure out the reasons why, which honestly we know, we just don't wanna say so.
Yeah, absolutely. And violence begets violence. That's not saying anything. We already know that that's the case, right? That's why we have conflicts in the world, around the world, like the one in Palestine and Israel, that go on for decades at a time. They go back hundreds of years sometimes. And if those conflicts never get resolved or addressed before the conflicts even get violent, adding violence to that equation is never going to make things better. And it's only going to perpetuate things because now, they did something to us, we have to retaliate. Now we have to retaliate to the retaliation, and that wasn't good enough, and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, there's always talks that, they're gonna come to the negotiating table. The United States is, I guess, trying to facilitate that. Qatar is trying to facilitate that, but we haven't seen anything meaningful. Now we're having violence here in our country related to that violence over there. It's not gonna get better. And it can't be overstated that we do not condone this type of behavior here. And we're not happy about this. It's not helping anything. And again,
yes. Sorry. So we have to say that, and I think it's necessary to say. But we only have to say that because there's a characterization of folks who come out and talk about how these innocent folks are being murdered in Gaza and Palestinians are being killed, and literally they're calling for the elimination of their entire population. That's openly being said. Mm-hmm. So you have to say, well, I'm not for other innocent folks being killed here because they have their focus on innocent folks who are also being held hostage. So whenever folks like Stephen Miller use this scenario for it, they're the worst of the worst kind of people. Do you really think Stephen Miller gives a damn about any Israeli folks or any Jewish folks or any of these hostages? He doesn't give a damn. He's using the issue for some kind of power grab move or for a demonization of other folks. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. Neither does Donald Trump, neither does anyone else in this administration. All being used for the purpose of grabbing more power. That is the number one priority for these folks. It has nothing to do with anything else. So when we have to say, I don't believe in that because then I'll be feeding into this fire, they're gonna say it anyway. So sure, make sure you have your stance for people that you care about to know that no, you don't stand for people being attacked for marching in the streets and talking about these innocent hostages that are being held. That's okay, but it should not, none of this energy should be reserved for the dishonest, disingenuous, power-hungry, fascist people that are running the country.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel ridiculous having to say something out loud that's so obvious, but like, yeah, like we have to, or else, the accusations come. And the
Mhm.
thing is, like, yeah, like you're right, they're gonna come anyway, right? They're gonna say that the left is celebrating this, they're gonna say that the left is supporting behavior like this, when that couldn't be further from the truth. And I think that a lot of people on the left have been very vocal about that.